Hello, sister leaders. This is Dr. Karen Hills Pruden. Welcome to the Sister Leaders Podcast. And of course, you know I am not alone because I travel with other sister leaders. And so today I have none other than Elaine Powell. Elaine Powell, say hello to the sister leaders community.
Hello, how are we today? I hope I'm sure you're very blessed. So thank you very much for having me, Dr. Karen, and thank you, listener, for listening.
Absolutely. So, I have questions. That is why I love this podcast because I get to get all up in your business and ask questions and do a little sleuthing around on these internet streets and different things and see what I can come up with. And so, came up with a few questions so that we can get to know you a little bit deeper beyond the beautiful face that we see on the screen. And so, my first question is, you're known as the Thought Disruptor. What does that title mean to you, and how did your journey to earn it begin?
Oh, okay. So the first answer to that question, how did I come by it, is very short. I was speaking at a conference and afterwards somebody came up to me. She says, "Oh my gosh, you just disrupted all of my thoughts." She goes, "You're a thought disruptor." And I was like, "Oh, I really, really like that." I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I do." Because some of my concepts, I know I've heard people say it afterwards, or I've seen their reaction. They're like, hold on, what did you just say? Really? And I know in terms of the world of personal development and cognitive thinking that if you don't disrupt a pattern, it's just going to keep on again and again. Things we keep on saying, patterns we keep on just repeating over and over again. And it's only when we hit impact or something really happens that we will disrupt it. So I want to disrupt your thinking before there's a huge impact that makes you change direction. So it came from a client, an audience member.
I love that. I love that. So,
And the second part was, how did I get started? Which is a
yes,
much
yes,
bigger
yes,
question.
yes. How did your journey to earn it begin?
Oh, well, when I was born in 19, no, I won't go that far back. I think the catalyst for me was being in my 20s, coming out of a long relationship and just really looking at my life. And I think at that point, it was a low point in my life, you know, dealing with the breakdown of a relationship. I was working in the field of law. It was phenomenal money at my age in my 20s, earning like 50,000, this like something like 20 something years ago. But I wasn't fulfilled. And so I definitely was searching. And I think the main catalyst was that I found God again because I went I grew up in Catholicism. And for me, it was a bit like Heineken. It just didn't touch the parts other beers, cannot reach. They have an advert and it says Heineken reaches parts other beers cannot reach. So it really wasn't landing for me in my heart space. And I think sometimes when we're in our lowest point, God can appear for us. And I think I was very curious. I had all these questions. Why? Like a child again. Why? Why is the world how it is? Why is my life how it is? Why? Why? And I was on the subway and this young man was talking to this woman about God and she just wasn't having it. She wasn't interested, but I was, because I was very curious. And I think that's the thing for us, to be curious about life, about opportunities, about challenges that come our way. Why? Ask that question, why? Because the bigger the question, the bigger the answer you'll get back. So I looked at him and he looked at me. He started talking, and we went to have tea upstairs in a cafe. And then I went to his church, and it opened my mind to questions, and I became a sponge. And I just wanted to take in everything. Suddenly my third eye, I think it's like the third eye opened. And I spoke to my dad and he gave me proverbs. He was very happy that he's like, go for it, Elaine. He's Jamaican, Elaine. Um, And then for whatever reason, somebody invited me to a personal development program called Landmark Worldwide. And a lot of people have done that program, 3 days, and it just transformed my life. And afterwards, I felt light as a feather. I had conversations that I really needed to have with my mother, because when we don't have those conversations with people at the heart of who we are, mothers and fathers, it can affect all our relationships. We forget how core they are to us. And I sat back and thought, what am I going to do really with my life if I had no limitations, no fear, money wasn't a object, or wasn't in the way, contacts, and I decided I wanted to work with young people and help them grow and learn about life at an earlier age. The same thing I wanted for myself, really. So that was my first journey in the year of 2000 into the world of personal development. And over the years, I'll skip forward. I've been in that world for 20 something years. I've led and head coached personal development programs on performance. I like the world of performance because I'm very action orientated. And the more that I've applied it, the more that we apply those learnings into our life, it becomes more habitual if we're consistent with it. You can't just go to the gym once or twice or for a week and think it's all going to change. It isn't. Some of our habits and our thinking habits have been there for 10, 20, 30 years. Well, it's going to take a long time to reprogram those thinking patterns. So yeah, Landmark was a great place for me to understand how the mind works, why we are how we are. And I kind of don't want to just go on and on, but in terms of speaking, I fell into the world of speaking, and that could be another conversation. But I was going out speaking about communication skill because eventually I was a public speaking coach, and I was speaking about speaking because that was my comfort zone. But I was like, I want to talk about how we think because that drives everything. And so eventually I started to, here was the communication skills. I was like, who am I to talk about thinking? I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, Tony Robbins. But an event asked me to give them another topic. And I thought, oh, this is my chance. So I gave them a topic around, I think it was around performance and how we think, and they liked it. And then I just did it again and again and again. Eventually, it outperformed the communication skills topics. And now I just speak on thinking concepts that help people deal with their challenges or when they're stuck and transform those into elevated results and transformation in a nutshell.
I love that. I think you moved a little bit into my next question. So if you've already answered it, or if you would answer it as the answer to this question, then let me know and I can move on to my next one. But my next question was, can you share a pivotal moment in your life or career when you realized the power of reframing challenges?
Oh, oh. Well, I think I'll talk about a practical one for people. I had how many years ago? I think this was about 7, 8. Oh, actually, no, I won't share that one. I'll share something that's kind of personal. Um, at some point in my life, I decided that I wanted to have children. So I'd spent my 20s in a long-term relationship, and then afterwards, when we weren't together, my 30s were very much about freedom, life. And I went traveling around the world for a year by myself. It was a year, it was a decade of adventure and just discovering who I was, as you do in your 30s. What do I like? Who am I? And when I came back from traveling, sort of in my late 30s, people kept on asking, are you going to have children? I was like, of course I will. Of course I'm going to meet somebody. And when I always live in hope and faith that God will provide that person for me to have a family with. And then the years ticked on and I wasn't finding anybody that I really felt they're my person. But I always had hope and faith. And then I got to my early 40s and I was like, okay, where are you? I'm still waiting. And I thought, let me go and check and see maybe if IVF is the way forward. So I went to a doctor and he said, well, no, you're not producing enough hormones for us to, even for the injections to increase the hormones. And because I think I'd come away from the personal development world for about 7, 8 years. And you have to keep these things up. You have to have a community around you. So you're inside that elevated conversation. Surround yourself with people who are elevated in their way of thinking. And I wasn't at that point because I'd stepped away for, I think it was like 7 years. I just stopped. I gave up. And when I found that news, when I got that news, I think it didn't hit me for a couple of weeks, and then suddenly it really hit me. And I really just went into this tailspin of really, really deep depression. I was also dealing with financial issues, the work I was training, I was with a training company, the work had dried up a little bit. So, and I'd got a big mortgage, well, a loan to pay for refurbishments and redevelopment of my property. So financially, I was being strained. And then emotionally, I was in a tailspin of blame and how could I have let this happen? Why did I leave it so late? I was in the blame game. I blame men. Where are all the good men? I blame God. How could you let this happen? And obviously, the biggest blame was on myself. And I think it was the first time I really got depressed. I'd never been depressed up until that time, not really truly, where, at some point I just really, really wanted to give up on life. And I pushed people away. And it was one of the darkest times I have ever had, where I'd just be on the tube, that's the subway, and I just burst out crying. And I couldn't stop. When you just can't stop crying. And then luckily, God was like, all right, Elaine, time. We need to get you out of this. My friend Jennifer, I talk about this story at a conference as well. My friend Jennifer came knocking at my door. Where are you, Elaine? And she took me back to Landmark, and I did like their signature program again called the Forum. And it was funny because I was sitting there and I was listening to a woman who was at the front of the room being coached, and she was in my same predicament. But her story was a businesswoman. She was too busy, and now she wants to have children. She can't find anybody, da, 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 da. And it's hard sometimes when you're being coached because you're inside all your minutiae and the mess of it all. But it was easier to watch somebody else being coached so you could separate yourself. And what I really saw was I wasn't taking responsibility. It was my responsibility to go and have children if I really, really wanted that. My responsibility to not blame, because it's so easy to blame other people. And when the finger's pointing out there, there's no power over there with you because you're victim of your circumstances or your situation. It was that person's fault. It was God's fault. Well, where does that leave you when it's outside of you? So when I took on being 100% responsible, it's my life. It's your life. Nobody's responsible for your life than you. I created that situation. And it's really powerful, even though nothing's 100% your responsibility, because there's always outside things. If you choose, it's a choice. If you choose to take on, well, actually, I'm responsible for this, then there's a power there that's like, okay, well, if I'm the problem, guess what? I can always be the solution. Whereas if it's over there with somebody else, you can never be the solution because it's their fault. They did it. And so in doing that, I took responsibility, which meant I stopped blaming men. I forgave, I forgave men, I forgave God. But really, really importantly, I forgave myself. And even now I can feel like the tears welling up in me, because that was the hardest thing to do. To forgive myself for letting a door close that would never be opened again, ever. You know, I stopped myself from having that experience. I can still feel myself welling up now. And it's
Yes.
not because I'm not healed. I am. I'm not sharing from the wound. I'm sharing from the scar, but I'm human. I'll still feel those emotions, but it's not the same emotional upset that would debilitate, can't even say it, me. But it was a really good lesson that life only happens once. If an opportunity is there in front of you, look at it, because it's been put there for a reason. And if it isn't like it, I'm sure many opportunities were put in front of me of eligible men. And I was like too fussy, or I was too this, I was too that. For me, I wasn't relying on God to really like show me the sign. He's the one. But you know, when we take responsibility, when things are put in front of us, I trust now that God's putting it in front of me for me to look at. And if it keeps on coming up, like it really truly is for us to look at and stop putting things off until tomorrow and the next day, because sometimes that day will never come.
Yes. Yes. So I want to
And so
pivot.
that was the reframe.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, I had to reframe it that these were the lessons for me in
Yes.
life to learn. And it just wasn't my journey to have children. My journey was to focus on, you know, the greater good of more people than just my 1 or 2 children.
So I want to pivot just a little bit and talk about leadership and transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you help leaders shift from fear based decision making to confident, bold action?
Mm-hmm. Fear-based decisions, did you say? Fear-based?
Decision making, fear based decision making to confident, bold action.
Yeah, it's that you have a thought and it's here. Oh, let me do something, you know, let me jump into this program, let me speak on stage, let me step up to a role that's been offered in my organization. So you have the thought, and then you have the vision of what's possible. And for some people, that gap is really small. They think it, and then they take the action to fulfill on what's going to happen. But so many people have a really big space, and it's in that space that the thinking comes in, the gremlins, the doubt. What if what if this happens? What if I do this? And hana 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 hana. And we a lot of times we can talk ourselves out of something that was actually really good for us. So one of the concepts that I share on stage is the be do have, or the do have be. And so, you know, I'll use an example of public speaking, because a lot of times people have fear of speaking. And so, you know, when I'm training and coaching people, which I still do around speaking, and I say, okay, so how are you being in this situation? And they go, yeah, I'm being nervous, I'm being fearful, I'm being anxious. And I say, okay, if you're being that way, you're going to take actions in line with how you're being. And they go, oh, yeah, I am. Because the majority of people do actions in order to have, and then they're going to be a certain way. So they'll go to work, they'll, you know, come in early, they'll do actions, come in early, do extra work, stay late so that they can have, maybe they want promotion, maybe they want extra money, and then they're going to be successful, and then they're going to be confident. And we've all heard someone say, when I do this and I get this result, then I'll be happy. Like the happiness and the confidence and the success, which is what we truly want, have to come after we do the actions. But actually, it's the other way around, because it's not what you're doing that creates your results. It's who you're being. Your being is the first thing that comes. It's that invisible step that comes before the doing. For instance, when we're being a type of angry, and I'm not making any emotions wrong, I'm not making angry wrong, but there's a certain type of anger that doesn't work. And we can all agree on that. It's okay to protest, but then when it turns into violence, that doesn't really work too well. So I don't call it wrong, it just doesn't work well. So when we're being angry in that way, then we take actions in line with being angry. We throw things, people say hurtful things, people become violent, and then the results are people are, sacked, broken relationships, people go to prison. So it's actually not what you're doing that creates your results. It's who you're being, because the being controls what you do, which will control what you have. So people have got it the wrong way round. So in terms of public speaking, they think, oh, well, I'm going to stand up there and do what I have to do. And then afterwards, I'll feel confident and I'll feel successful. But no, it's the other way around. So when I ask my clients, I go, okay, I can get that if you're being anxious, nervous, fearful, you do realize that you're going to take actions in line with that way of being. And you're going to step on stage and you're going to get the results of someone who's been really anxious, be really nervous, and it's going to affect the audience as well, because they're going to feel that. So then I say, okay, let's just take that all away. Take it all away. You're feeling nervous and anxious because you're going to go for an interview. Okay, I get it. But is that going to help you being in the interview if you're being that way? No. If you're being resigned and cynical, is that going to help you? No. Is it fixed inside of you? No, it's not. It's a state, and the state changes from moment to moment. So a really key question to ask yourself is, how would I love to be? How would I love to be when I'm standing on stage? Well, and I see people sit up and they go, well, oh, now they're stepping into something they actually really want. Yeah, I want to be confident. I want to be clear. I want to be bold. Okay. Do you know how to be those ways? Yeah, of course you do. All right. That's all you have to focus on. That's how you want to be. And if you're aware of it, guess what? Your body knows how to be those ways. Step into that, because you get what you focus on. If you're going into an interview, how do you want to be? Oh, yeah. I want to be confident. I want to be relatable. Yeah, and I want to be connected. Okay. Focus on those 3 words as you go into the interview. So whatever you have in front of you, you have a choice. You can focus on how you don't want to be, or you can focus on how you want to be. And the great thing is, you know how to be those ways. At some point in your life, you have been confident, you have been bold, you have been courageous. So you know how to be that way. And when you're being that, it's all about awareness. Awareness, Dr. Karen, is so important for people to catch themselves. Catch yourself as you go into this pattern of thinking, and then you go down a rabbit hole and a deep, dark tunnel where if you'd been aware, you would have caught yourself. No, 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 I don't want to be that way. Okay, how do I want to be? It shortens the gap between thinking, all right, I want to be in action. All right, what actions will you take when you're being that way? So that's a really simple tool. People can ask themselves 2 questions. How am I being that's not serving me? Okay, don't beat yourself up. That's the key thing. Don't beat yourself up. You're human. And then ask, okay, how would I love to be? And start speculating. And then what actions would you take if you're being that way? And hey, presto.
I love that. So it does. I hear the theme of mindset when you're talking, but what most of us have been taught, preparation before reward, which is probably why we think that you have to do the work first before you feel that positive feeling, whatever that is, fill in the blank. But it is the mindset of giving yourself that feeling that you've already reached the reward as you continue to do the work. is what I
Yeah.
hear you
An
saying.
example would be I was asked to be on a panel at a conference, and they gave me the questions we were going to be asked on stage. I think like 2 months in advance. And obviously I'm meant to prepare so I can be fluid when I answer these questions. And every time something came, in my calendar, I was meant to spend time on working on some answers, stories, facts, statistics. I kept on putting it off, kept on putting it off. And then 2 days before the conference, I was like, oh, let me just pull something out of the hat. I'm on stage, there's three of us, and they asked me the first question. And I said what I said. It was okay. And then the young man beside me, he answered the same question. And oh my gosh, Dr. Karen, his answer was incredible. I was like, I know you prepped in advance, you fluid, you had numbers, and every time they asked a question, I just felt smaller and smaller because I hadn't really prepared. And it was more about not the preparation, it was more about who I was being. So at the afterwards, I spoke to my coach about it, and she knew about this, be do have. She said, okay, well, how are you being when you were preparing? And I was like, I was being irresponsible because they were paying me. I was being I guess lazy in a way, kind of hesitant. There was mostly some fear base around it, but I wasn't really present to the fear. But I was being irresponsible. I was being procrastinating. I wasn't being integrous, all of these things inside my preparation. So then she asked me a question, how would you, because she knows all about this, I coached her on it. How would you love to have been when you're preparing? I was like, oh, now if I'd been excited, I would have really put a different spin on that preparation. If I was being curious, I was like, oh, how could I make this like something different in how I answer it? So even if you have to prepare something, you can prepare something and you're being cynical, resigned, and frustrated. I say you can have two people that have the same project, the same finances, the same team, everything's the same. But the person over here who's being resigned, cynical, and frustrated is going to take totally different actions from the person over here who's being engaged, vibrant, passionate. Different ways of being create different actions that will create different results.
Yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly. I've experienced that myself, and how I thought about something. I was able to see things differently or see opportunities in a situation based on changing my thought process. So I've actually experienced that myself. Want to pivot just a little bit to talk about good leaders versus transformational leaders. And so in your experience, what separates a good leader from a transformational leader?
It's just my opinion. I feel a transformational leader enables somebody to find the answer for themselves. An example of that is when I used to work with young offenders, I used to use on them what I call the Jedi mind trick. Now, these young people, throughout the day, they had a good behavior card that they had to carry with them. And throughout the day, as they went in their morning breakfast, they went to lessons, they had games, just throughout the day, they collected points. And what do more points make? Prizes. And if they collected enough points, so it was rewarding good behavior. So at the end of the day, if they had enough points, they'd have a TV in their room when the doors closed because they were locked in, because it was a behavior assessment unit. So it wasn't the typical young offenders. There was 8 boys per unit, 3 units, and 4 staff to 8 boys because it was a behavior assessment unit. So it was a high touch point of 2 boys to 1 member of staff. Whereas if you go to young offenders, it's like 100 boys to 1 member of staff. So it was a behavior assessment unit. And a lot of times, if they didn't get the points, they would, as we call it, kick off. They'd be really upset. They'd throw things. They'd kick off. So I realized very quickly that if they said, what they were going to get at the end of the day, that they wouldn't kick off. So what that looked like, I'd say, Johnny, tell me, if you don't get your desired points at the end of the day, what's going to happen? And they go, no, 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 I will get the points. If they're in a lesson and I'm like, oh, I don't know if you deserve these points. I go, no, 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 because I'm going to behave throughout the day. And if I don't get the points, I won't get the TV. So I was allowing them for something. I was giving them a leeway on something. Come at the end of the day, and at the end of the night, they don't have enough points. And so they're about to kick off. And I said, Johnny, what did you tell me that was going to happen if you didn't get enough points? And they said, yeah, I wouldn't get my TV if I didn't get enough points. And I said, well, you said it, didn't you? And they said, yeah. I said, okay, I didn't say it. So for me, I feel like people can tell you, how good does it feel when people tell you what you have to do? Does it feel good? Do we honor it? Do we honor it when people tell us what we have to do versus when we tell ourselves? That's where the gold is. So I feel transformational leaders, they enable you to find it out for yourself. They enable you to find those answers. They enable you to step up. When I was running a TEDx event, my first year, I micromanaged my whole team of 15 and I was burnt out. The second year, I allowed them to fall forward. You have to let people learn by their own mistakes, or else they're never going to learn. You're going to comfort them in cotton wool, and that isn't where transformation happens. Transformation happens for me in them discovering their aha moments for themselves, in their learning, in not getting it right, that what can I do better the next time? So, it's a simple answer. It's a answer. I don't think there's one answer, but I feel enabling people to find their aha. That's why when I do keynotes, it's very interactive, because I can tell you what I tell you is what you tell yourself. That's where the gold is.
I love that. And you mentioned TEDx when you were talking. And so I want to tap into your relationship with TEDx. And so as someone who's helped, I believe, over 100 people land TEDx talks, what makes a speaker truly unforgettable?
You're asking some really hard questions here, like the gold questions. What makes someone truly, did you say inspirational or
Unforgettable?
Unforgettable. Oh, I don't think there's one answer to that. I think I'd have to
Give me Elaine's answer then. Just give me Elaine.
I think the key thing is being authentic. Just being, I think, look, in terms of TEDx and speaking, you've got 4 key areas. You have to have structure to your talk, or else it's really hard for it to be unforgettable because people are a bit lost. Where are we in this talk? You have to have great content. So you have to have stories and great openings, things for the audience to reflect on. You have to have really good delivery. The delivery is the icing on the cake, but what sits in the middle is you. And I found as someone who's helped people with TEDx, I'm a TEDx speaker, as a keynote speaker, the more you can work on you, your internal stuff, the easier it is for people to connect with you, because it really is about connection. That's what makes it truly engaging, because sometimes I could be talking about origami or something really trivial like the powers of a pen. But if people feel that you're genuine and there's nothing going on in your head, you have to be more in flow to be authentic. You're not thinking, you're not overthinking things, you're just in flow, like we are in this podcast. I'm just in flow, you're just in flow as you ask the questions. Things can just come through you and you're not overthinking, you're just truly being yourself. So I think for me, the core thing, apart from the other things that are around an engaging talk, is just being your authentic self. And that goes back to mindset, because it's hard to be authentic self if you don't even know yourself, if you're still working out who you are, and you're overthinking things, and you're trying to people please, just be yourself, as they say, because everybody else is taken.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to ask the question that I think when we work with people, I think we always learn something when we work with people. And so, what's the most powerful lesson that you've learned as a TEDx curator and coach?
It's another one of those questions. What's the most powerful thing
Lesson.
I've lessons? Yeah, that each and every one of us is incredible, omnipotent, wealth of wisdom, knowledge, authenticity, transformation. Even when, I've coached people and they have that, I can't do this, this is not possible, am I good enough? And we all have that, am I good enough question just pops up forever in my life, that we're beyond good enough. I think that's what I see every time I'm with someone coaching, every time I'm in front of an audience member. I see the giant. That's what I see. Truly, we are giants. And I think it's Marianne Williamson that said, your playing small does not serve the world. Like, our light is meant to shine, and to give yourself permission to shine. And so I feel like when I work with people, when I coach them, when I speak, I give them permission to shine and just reflect back to them who they truly are.
I love that. So I want to talk about disruptive thinking. And so, what exactly is disruptive thinking, and how can organizations start cultivating it in their teams?
Yeah. So for me, disruptive thinking is stopping to look at, because there's always going to be things in our thinking that's working. It works. And I mean, it works not just for us, it works for other people as well, because there's things people are doing that's working for them, and it's not serving other people. So it always has to be twofold. Does it serve you, and does it serve other people? So that's a simple question to ask someone to ask themselves. Is my thinking serving me and others? If it is, fabulous, keep it going. And if it doesn't, that's where the disrupt comes in. You have to stop and start to look at, okay, so if this isn't serving me, if it isn't serving other people, how can and I feel like transformation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't really happen just you sitting by yourself. It's in conversations. That's where transformation happens. It's in an incubation. It's sitting with your supervisor and brainstorming and soundboarding. So with organizations, because a lot of our thinking is old patterns, it's survival mechanisms, it's training that it's over time. I can come in and do a keynote for 60 minutes or an hour, 60 minutes or 90 minutes. And it can only do so much in that time frame when someone's thinking has been there for 20 years. And you'll see, they say, have a look at somebody's outside world, and you really get to see what's going on inside of them. It's just a reflection. So if things aren't working on the outside for you, actually you have to stop and look at what's going on the inside. So for organizations, it's continuing to develop their teams, and not just top down. Sometimes they spend so much money on the top. I get top down because, leaders, how someone's leading will translate downwards, but still work on the people who are at the lower levels, because they're the ones on the ground, and you have to continually develop them. We do know during recessions, like training and development are the first things people cut. Why? They need it more. They need it more in those challenging times. So,
Agreed.
so just to sum up, I would say For yourself, ask that simple question. Does it serve me and others? If it does, great. If it's creating, great impact, great. But if it isn't, stop, get a coach, get somebody to soundboard that you trust, who can elevate your thinking. They do say the same thinking that got you into this problem, I think it's Einstein, is not the same thinking that's going to get you out of it. That means read a book, do a course, have a conversation with not somebody, like, don't ask someone to build a house if they're a baker.
Mhm.
Ask somebody who is 10, 20, 30 steps ahead of you for advice on something. Don't ask your mum and dad if they have no idea. Yeah, they have wisdom, but if it's a specific, challenge around your business, ask somebody who's already there. And if you're an organization, bring me in to speak to them. We'll get the ball rolling, and then we can have conversations about training and development that is more long term. Because if it took 20, 30 years, it's going to take a little while to break patterns, to reframe things, for people to, it's the habits over time, consistency. You'll create new neural pathways in your brain, which will create different ways of being, different habits, but it's consistency over time.
I love it. So my research shows that you are using your talents everywhere, and so I landed on Amazon Prime. And so, what inspired you to create the Speak Up series on
Oh,
Amazon Prime, and what impact do you hope it has had on viewers?
Oh, well, I didn't create it.
Okay.
It wasn't mine. They've been running it for years, and they brought me in as one of the producers. And so I was with them for a year, and then it folded. So it's no longer, it was a really great platform for people to share their 10-minute talk to an audience member. And as a speaker, we know we need footage of us speaking. So it was a great thing they could use in their speakers show reel. And it was obviously on Amazon Prime, but it's not there anymore.
Well, I know something that is there now. And so, how does your background in stand up comedy influence your presence and approach on the stage today?
Oh, well, there has been research that those who know how to make people laugh, I think in whatever medium, you're going to earn a lot more money. I don't think any person sits on in an audience member going, I hope this person's boring. I really do. I've paid for them to be boring. No, people want to laugh. They want to have a good time. And for me, because my subject matter, I want people to discover things for themselves. So it is very interactive. And I have had people cry in the interaction side of it, but that opens up the vulnerability of everybody else. If I cry, if I feel the emotions, the audience actually is a reflection of you. So if you're stiff, if you're scared, if you're nervous, that's how the audience members, they're going to be anxious for you. If you're having a good time, if you're using not jokes, because jokes are, you don't know how they're going to land. Some people may get offended by the joke. So I say sprinkle humor all the way through. We can all be humorous. We all know how to use humor. So I'm more of a humorous speaker. I know how to use humor. I know how to banter with the audience so that if I hear something funny, I will point it out. And if I laugh, once again, the audience is a reflection of you. If I laugh, they'll laugh as well.
I love that. So I view you as a woman of influence. And so, as a woman of influence in speaking and thought leadership, how do you advocate for diverse voices to be heard on our global stages?
Yeah. I think working with people to land a TEDx talk. I started it when during the pandemic, I I wanted to do a summit. So I interviewed, people like John D. Martini, Fabian Fredrickson. Oh gosh, lots of kind of key Simon Bailey, key speakers, because it was going to level me out with them. And I saw that a lot of summits, it was just very or white people or black faces, and it wasn't. And I wanted like a sprinkling of every diversity, that I could find on, So I had people of the Indian culture, Latin American, people African American, British, French, Indian, and I think I've just kept all of this up. Sometimes people just have people who look like them. There was an awards ceremony, speaker award that happens in the UK. And when I saw the judges, I had to go to the organizer and say, you want to look at your judges because they're all Caucasian. And when I looked at who they'd put through as nominees, out of, I think, 80 nominees, 1 black woman, 2 Indians. And that was it. And that was a reflection of their judges, because there is bias, and we all carry bias.
Yeah.
And then when I looked at who won, they were all Caucasians. Don't tell me there's only white people who speak or who applied. And that was a reflection of that, of judges or the organizer who's not being aware that if you have judging, if you have a leadership team, have a leadership team that covers the demographics. If your country is predominantly white, fine. If your country is predominantly black, fine. But if your country is a mix, have a judging panel, have a leadership team that reflects your workforce. So I just always make sure I'm being responsible to have people who, when you look at the people I've helped with TEDx and you see all my flyers, it's a sprinkling of colors. We have that responsibility.
Absolutely. So we are down to our last 2 questions, and I think this is kind of like a fun question. You might not feel like it, but I believe it's a fun question. And so, what's one question people never ask you but should?
Will you marry me?
There goes that comedy. There goes the comedy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my answer.
Legitimate answer. I think I set myself up for that one. Okay.
Yep.
And what do you want your legacy to be as the thought disruptor?
That we only have, as far as I know, one life to live on this earth. And I really want to leave a legacy that people they live it to their fullest. They didn't hold themselves back, that they trusted their intuition. I think that's the key thing. Trust your intuition. I think it's like the back cave to God. He's like, trust your intuition. It's usually leading us to incredible opportunities and a pathway to our higher self. So, I want my legacy to be that I gave permission for people to trust themselves to live the best life possible.
That's beautiful. So, as we close, I want you to share with the Sister Leaders community any products, projects, speaking engagements, or anything that you have going on. Other than the Sister Leaders Conference, because I'm going to talk about that in my closing, but you will be one of those speakers who are going to be hitting the stage, how they can follow you and connect with you on social media. Just leave us with all of that information. What do you have going on? Anything that we can support you as a community, and how do we stay connected to you?
Yeah, well, you could always Google me, Elaine Powell, and I'll come up. My social medias are usually Elaine Powell UK, because there was an Elaine Powell taken. So Elaine Powell UK. If it's for speaking, then you can go to my speaker website, which is elainepowell.com. And if it's with regards to getting paid to speak or with regards to delivering a TEDx talk, then you can go to the mindspeakacademy.com. And you can find me everywhere: LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm there.
Awesome. And so I would be remiss if I did not mention that Elaine is one of our headliners for the 2025 Sister Leaders Conference coming up at the Rivers Casino. We are going back to the casino. We sold out on last year, and so we're excited to go back this year. And look, our theme for this year is her vision, her voice, her victory. And so we are excited to have Elaine grace the stage, and she'll have company with her because we'll have a ton of other headliners as well as keynotes. And so if you have not already gotten your ticket with the early bird discount, it is up on the website. The website discount is 20% off for a limited time. And so that's sisterleaders with a S conference.com. That's the website, sisterleaders with a S conference.com. And we will see you in person. But if you don't want to come to Virginia, then you can live stream for my global community because we have returned that option as well. And so want to make sure that you support this year. We are excited. This is our 5th birthday. So we're going to be celebrating, and I got a couple of surprises for the people who are going to be in the house, because what is a birthday if you don't have surprises and if you don't have gifts? And so we are going to have fun. And so join us there and come see Elaine and connect with Elaine in the virtual community as well. And so until our next interview, bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Karen.